Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You've made it the last session of Summit. I know it's a total cliche, saving the best for last, but when it's actually true, it's not a cliche. So here we are with, in my opinion, one of the best sessions of this entire program. It's a really unique story about using Jira for a use case I never imagined possible. So with us today, we have Jesse and Mike. Jessie, just keep this in mind as you're watching the presentation, is entirely self-taught on Jira. And when she's not Jira-ing, she is a mother to a 1-year-old, 8-year-old, and 18-year-old, which is pretty incredible. And then Mike, his claim to fame is that he is a stage dad to his 16-year-old son, who is a computer animation whiz. Maybe doesn't realize it yet. Mike kind of wants to live vicariously through his son. So. There you have it. I will let you guys take it away.
Hi, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming here. So just some housekeeping items before we begin. Our Jira instance, we don't keep any PHI in it. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, well, let me figure out what button here. There we go. So I work for Washington University, and I work for the DIAN-TU, which is the Dominantly Inherited Alzheimer's Network Trials Unit. And so we launched in 2012 the world's first prevention trial for Alzheimer's disease. So I don't know if many of you know or not, there is no medication out there for prevention or to even treat Alzheimer's disease. The population of our trial is those who are at risk for early onset Alzheimer's disease, which is dominantly inherited Alzheimer's disease. So you'll see DIAD on the slide up there. So we focus on those interventional therapies, those that can make an impact on dementia. We have a worldwide collaboration here with pharma companies, research institutions, the NIH, and also the Alzheimer's Disease Association, some private and private funding that goes into our trial. And we also listened to our participants and their families, those that are mostly impacted by this disease. They wanted a better chance at active medication. So when you bring 2 drugs into a clinical trial, you give a 75% chance of being on active drug versus 50-50. And any kind of hope for them is what they're looking for. This population is about 1%. Dominantly inherited Alzheimer's disease affects about 1% of the population. It strikes in the 30s to the 50s, and it's a rapid decline from there. Our trial is registered with the FDA as a adaptive platform trial, which means drugs can come into the trial and they can leave the trial based off of other research, external and internal research, and safety signals. So we have this flexible trial situation, so we don't have to start up a whole new trial for a whole new drug. And to do that, it's extremely costly to do that. So you have to submit to all your regulatory authorities. You have to, the time and the money it takes to start up a whole new trial is incredible. So you take this platform trial and you allow drugs to come in and out of it. And it's similar use in oncology studies. Oncology studies are a little bit different, where active medication is, you're always getting active medication and the drugs come in and out as they're effective or not. But in this population, adaptive platform trial had not been used yet. So we are the third-party sponsor for this drug trial. We have 2 different pharma partners, and that allowed for the need to have a third-party sponsor in order to protect the proprietary information from both pharma partners. So we're tasked with oversight of the trial and for protecting confidentiality. And so we needed effective collaboration. So we use Confluence to share documents with our pharma partners. And so we're governed by good clinical practice, which GCP is a word that you hear a lot in FDA compliance. And we're governed by this document. It's called the, and I'm gonna read it from the slide down here, the E6R2 Good Clinical Practice Integrated Addendum to ICH E6R1 Guidance for Industry. So it's about 69 pages that I'm sure you could pick that up and it would be so riveting for you, but that's what we're governed by, just by the FDA, just in the US. That doesn't mean that that doesn't account for the other countries that we're in. We're in 6 countries and we have over 200 participants. So what we needed to do was to track. We needed to track some pieces that were coming in, the pieces that we had oversight over, the so 200 participants, monthly visits, safety visits, all these pieces of information that come on each visit, and we needed a way to track this information. And initially, this didn't scream Jira. We didn't know about Jira. So we looked at some other options. We looked at CTMS systems, so clinical trial software systems. They didn't fully meet our need. The CTMS system only really lets you see like right in front of you. It's extremely difficult to customize, and we did not have that expertise at all. And we completely priced this out of our budget. There was no budget to do that. We tried using spreadsheets, and we did use spreadsheets. We used lots of different spreadsheets. And of course, you know, there's no audit trail. It's difficult to be proactive, no workflow, and hard to do concurrent access. And we had lots of different team members doing the quality control over the source documents, the piece of information that were coming in. We have 100% QC on our cognitive assessments because the cognitive assessments are the primary endpoint for the drug trial. So we have 100% QC of that because we want that data to go out and be valid. So as I said, we tried using spreadsheets. And here's one of them.
That's a part of one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of one. And can we please give kudos to the creator of this Excel spreadsheet? It was not me. This thing did do some amazing things. Shortly after we implemented Jira, it broke. And I think it knew. I think it got jealous. So it did, and but yeah, we tracked, and simply just looking at, all it did was track the visit dates. It would let me know when a visit date was going to, you know, when we were past a visit date or a projected visit date, but there was no way for me to be proactive with that spreadsheet. And we also looked at custom software. And again, we go back to the cost. We didn't have the money in the budget to do that. And expensive, well, we didn't have the expertise to take care of that. So, and I think I mentioned this trial being adaptive as it was, we needed to be able to change our tracking as it changed. So we're on Amendment 9 of the protocol right now. So earlier in this conference, you guys are at Jira 8. So we are at Amendment 9 of the protocol. We started in 2012. And each one of those amendments to the protocol is like a major upgrade to our system. It's a change. We changed the dose level. We extended the time of the trial from 2 years to 4 years. Some of our participants are in this trial up to 7 years. So now this problem screamed Jira. And then we sought out a consulting group, and this is how we got it done. We coordinate hundreds of people and events around the world. We needed visibility on the past and current upcoming events. We needed processes and workflows to deal with deviations that came in. So protocol deviations are, they're things that happen. We're dealing with participants. These are people. These are lives that we're talking about. They're in this trial for a really long time. So if they're not able to have a dose, or you know, they get out of window for a period of time, we need to be able to adapt and track that. So we just know where they're at, and there's not all these questions hanging out there. Because we're looking at, in the grand scheme of things, we were looking at just 194 people that actually enrolled into the trial. And we had 240 screen.
Cool. So this is where this is where I came in with ISIS. excuse me. And at the time, like she said, they didn't consider Jira for this task. And when they asked us about Jira, we said, no, that's dumb. Or not dumb, but that's not going to work. But then they were insistent, and they sold us on the idea. And at the same time, it was great timing. This right here, you can see, is an Atlassian. Dan Radigan had a series of blog articles published almost like, I think, a month or two before we went on site. And he was using Jira in a way that I've also used Jira in weird ways. They implemented at Atlassian an asset management tracking system within Jira using no add-ons. And basically every asset was a Jira issue, and it had the whole life cycle for that asset was a Jira workflow. And that kind of model, seemed to fit what they're doing here with their participants. They had a whole life cycle within this trial. And every type of thing that we were tracking was an issue type. So unlike in Jira where you try and get issues and you try and get them through the workflow as fast as possible, you're trying to get things off your plate, this is where Jira can be used as a slow roll, track things at the rate they're supposed to be and make sure they happen when they're supposed to. But it's a different way of trying to use Jira. And so his blog articles really inspired a lot of how we implemented this solution. Is this button right here? Cool. Awesome. Anyways, and so our goals were this: leverage Jira and Jira concepts as much as possible. Just everything that Jira do, use every part of that Jira, every part of Jira, use it in its implementation, and do as minimal of customizations as possible. Like they said, this is not funded by huge drug companies. This is a academic type thing, and budget was key, and they want to make sure that it can be done, that after this thing was put into place, it had a 4+ year life cycle they had to fit within their budgetary guidelines. And they wanted to use Jira, obviously, to manage the participants going through that, and also use Jira for other purposes also, to use it not just for all the participants, but for everything else, like tracking invoices or something like that. Use Jira as much as possible to get as much value out of it, which is good. So what we're going to show you here is, this is the main workflow that is used to track a participant through the trial here. And you can see here, there's a top third here that is about 6 to 8 weeks of how they're onboarded, and Jesse will go through that process in a second. And then, so there's that top third is about 6 to 8 weeks, and then that bottom 2/3 is about, can be up to 4 or 5 years. So you think these issues slowly wind their way through and spawn other, attached issues that represent the events, but this is the main workflow. So there you go.
I get to use the laser here.
Yeah,
so I'll point over here at this one.
Oh, cool.
Up here, so we would get notifications that participants were coming in. And so we kept them in a scheduled status before we knew for sure if they were going to actually enroll. They were just kind of talking to the site, and they were seeking out participants. And then you go to this consented status, which is very important in clinical trials here. You can't do anything with a participant until they have consented. So we had this initial consenting process where they just simply consented to screen to the trial. Once they were randomized, they would actually consent to the drug consent that they are randomized to. You could go straight to in screening here once they're consented, and in screening is a process that is just initial meeting of inclusion or exclusion criteria, ensuring that their clinical labs are in order and their medical history doesn't preclude them from being in the trial. If their clinical labs, for instance, didn't meet the guidelines, then they could rescreen and then loop back through here. or if they were unable to, for whatever reason, in the screening process, then they would come up final screen fail. Once they were in screening, then they would go to randomized, which is a baseline visit. And baseline takes about 3 or 4 days, and it's extensive assessments, lots of PET scanning, MRIs, biomarkers, and then that's when they receive their first dose of drug. So here in the initial, when you create a participant in the participant tracker, the issue type was the participant, and then you entered the number. That number is assigned to them once they're consented. That goes into a system, and that system spits out a number, and we get a notification with that number. And then we track that. We made that the summary, and then we kept this subject number field here that helped it link into the events that were created in the next project. The drug arm is selected, and the participant starts the study here in randomization. So we get the randomization date, the treatment group that they're randomized to, their baseline CDR score, which is part of the tracking that we do. All of their cognitive testing is based off of their baseline CDR score. Cool. CDR is clinical dementia rating.
And I didn't know that this had, like, so is it right there? Cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Learn something every day. Okay, so now we're going to walk, so like on that last screen, showed how they picked the drug. There's 2 drugs. It was 3 for a while. Now it's 2 again. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to walk through the one that was picked. So here, in that last screen, you pick the arm, and you'd have to here. Oh, I'll go back. Sorry. Yeah, so here, this right here, you have to pick that, and this is a validated workflow step where you have to pick the right one. It won't let you go down the wrong side of that workflow here. So go through here. Now, almost everything in all the automation that we did to create all these other events that are linked to the participant are all based on this first dose date. So this is the magic thing where this picks when they take their first dose, and every event from now until 4 or 5 years through the study, or up to 5 years, correct?
Up to 7 years.
Up to 7 years is all based on that first dose date. Everything aligns off that. So we'll be talking about first dose like a ton. So here, they put that there. Now, so when they pick that first dose date and they go through, we wrote a little add-on sort of thing that it reads these little configuration files that are the template of how it spins up all of the linked events. Now, there's tons of add-ons out there that you guys know that automatically create issues, like Bob Swift's Magic Creator or whatever it is, and all these things do that. So, but we couldn't use any of those because this thing creates things directly off of that custom field, and it creates all these link types. It was pretty complex, and even to this day, as far as I know, there's no add-on that really does it. So we had to create our own. But what is great is the actual workflow step is a generic workflow step. It tells the add-on, I'm this workflow. Like, like it knows what, like, workflow name, the transition name, and it knows where to copy the issue from, because like there's a template issue that represents that type of event, like either a MRI scan or a dose or like that. And then it has the thing that it populates into the summary of the issue, and this is that first dose date field. So it calculates it based on that, and then it creates date offsets, like due dates, I guess, and it's in days. So it says, like, make it so it's 896 days, 1,092 days, on and on. So it spins up all those linked issues, and that creates, it's like, it creates all these linked events out into the future. You see, and that's where I was, talking about that. I got ahead of myself there. Now, when we hit that thing there, it created, you can see all these events here and their status, and even more. So it created these cognitive assessment events, clinical assessment events, dose visits, and MRIs. So it created all those ones, and so now they start to populate. Picture this big calendar in the sky, and every participant has this list of events that they have to do and track and stuff like that. So keep going. And here you can see here, we hit the more, and it shows you all these events here. And they can go and click on any participant and just see what's next, what they've done, and what's on their tote board. I mean, just for each one, and then she has tons of other things to show you everybody. But this is a per participant view here. Now, to go forward in that workflow, if you notice, there are those MRI, where there were 6 MRI events. So they need to make sure that these participants have a place to go and get get these scans. So every MRI place or PET scan place or they have to have a place to go to have this done. So they have a process there's a process to certify these imaging places, and they have to link it to the participant or it will not go forward in the workflow. And each one of those is an issue. So we'll go through here. And right here you can see we are doing just a normal issue link like you would in Jira. And you see here that ST, that is a site. And we'll here. And we'll link that site. And again, you can't link it unless it is actually linked. And here actually is, we'll just do a quick detour into the imaging site issue. You see here, this one is in my home state there, or not, well, where I live at least. And then here you can see here, it has gone through the workflow. It's gone through the whole process. And you can see here, 2 people here are linked to this site. In fact, we'll kind of go through that. And here's the workflow. Now, the workflow here is pretty straightforward. There's actually other things that a lot of the state of the site certification process is captured as like custom fields. But this kind of tracks the general process where they find a site, make sure it's good, they go through the process, and then it's okay to link participants to it. And again, right there, those are the link people to it. Now, we're going to start here. Years have gone by now, like 2 years about, and are starting what's called Amendment 4. As she said, like every amendment is like a software rev, basically, where they have to do changes, we have to do changes, slight changes to how things are. It might create issues, move them around like that. Let's put it there. Now, before we hit that button, you see there's those, I think there's 39 issues that go out for 2 years, all those types. And then we hit that link. We hit that Amendment 4. And by the way, if there's that button will not work unless certain things are met, things are linked to it. All the previous, it validates that certain things are set before that it will create all those. And then here you can see it now created total of 67 more, so 67 plus all those. It created more types of events, like it did the MRI visits, imaging site visit, final year visit, so all these other types of events. So as they changed the actual study, they created new event types, basically. And we had to implement that in the Amendment 4. Now, and then as we wind down through there, it's kind of a rinse and repeat type thing. It actually got more complicated. So here, when we did Amendment 5 and stuff like that, it created more events. It also would, and this is very tricky to QC, it also would remove events also. So it's very complicated. to both create that software and Jesse and her team to QC it. I don't know how they even did it, because it's very mind-racking, because, you know, it might get rid of critical information like that, but they did a great job, and they did it on time and everything. It's great. Now, let's talk about reporting. All standard Jira stuff. And I think this is you, Jesse. There you go.
Yeah, so self-taught Jira admin. I don't have any other, didn't have anything else other to use than to learn how to do JQL. So we worked together, and I figured out how to report on several different kinds of things. But this filter right here is the one that I live in and day out when I check in the status of the visits that are completed, which is just simply searching that subject number and looking at all their events and seeing the status of where they're at and ensuring that one visit happens before a next. We have these safety MRIs in place at a certain time for a reason, and they can't go on to the next visit until their safety MRI has been done and it's been read, and we get notification for those things. We also are able to look at trends for different things. So we have home health nurses that are administering the medication, and then on certain visits, there's also cognitive visits, and those home health nurses are also trained as cognitive raters. And so that means they're trained to administer this cognitive testing to this population. And we have 100% a QC for the cognitive testing, which I think I mentioned before. So when I run this, I can take a look at let me see here. So the issue type is cognitive testing, and if there's any notes in Jira about the cognitive testing administration, I can filter that by that rater. And if we have continual issues with a rater, so these things are not easy to administer. So we can keep an eye on and continual retraining or removing of raters or home health nurses that have issues. And this is just one of the ways that we take a look at protocol deviations, because protocol deviations happen, but we need to make sure that we mitigate them when they do. And then we have a dashboard here. Right here, this is the participant tracker dashboard. So this is just kind of the status of the participants down into the different drug arms that they're in. There's the overall, the statuses that they're in, and then it's broken down again by who's active, who's early termed, who's in post-treatment follow-up. We've had participants that have discontinued IP due to safety, but they still remain in the trial for cognitive assessments. And then we track the attrition, and that's the individual. And when I can separate those out, it's easy for me to report back to the pharma partners the status of each of their participants. And then we also have, one of the things that we have is kind of a sub-study to this study is tau PET tracer study. So tau is a protein that's built up in the brain, and we have a PET tracer that we administer to certain participants who have consented. Not all of these participants consented, and this wasn't available at every site. So we needed a way to track who consented to it and at what sites this was done at. So this is broken down into the the tau that was administered at year 1 and year 2, and again at year 4. And then there is who was consented and who wasn't. And so this was just a really quick and easy way for me. I didn't have to report out. Anybody who needed to know this information can look at this dashboard.
So, you know, what I want to say about this is when you guys saw that spreadsheet, that crazy big one, and I created one sample dashboard to help them QC that, to compare what was in the spreadsheet to when we're trying to move the data in the spreadsheet into here. And I just created the one, I walked away, and I come back a few years later and just gone crazy. I mean, just a ton of dashboards on everything. I've never seen a client, like basically, it seems like anytime they ask Jessie for information, she creates a dashboard, and they have real-time data. And so that's been like the best thing, that they just get every ounce of information out of their data and do it in a way that is reproducible, that is instant, and she communicates the point. So again, I created one dashboard that was a piece of crap, ugly, and we just got, I think you have like maybe 30 dashboards. Yeah. It's with widgets like we can't even fit. This thing's got like 20 widgets on it, so it's great.
So I am the only Jira admin, so I am able to take a week off and come to Summit, and I don't have to report back to anybody because they know where to go. They know where to go to get the information, and that was our goal. Because before, whenever we had in those spreadsheets or just in somebody's brain, which we did a lot of that, we had a lot of difficult knowledge transfer. So we were able to do this, and I can take a week off work and not have to worry about reporting back.
I think this is both of them. Okay. So let's just talk about this thing. So first, let's talk about add-ons. Like I said, one of the goals was, as Jira unplugged, just as little as possible. So we used Jira Suite utilities, which you guys probably all have, and we started out in Script Runner that whole JSON document that was consumed, and we're transitioning, almost done with doing it into Jira Miscellaneous Workflow Extension, or whatever it is. And it's been almost very easy. It's great, and so both work well, but this seems to work better for this purpose. And that is it for add-ons, for us to do all this automation. Everything else is stock Jira, which has been great for upgrading and everything else. So that was a goal we had, and it's a goal that we met. And then other add-ons that are in there is Tempo, timesheets. They use it for other things outside of this project, in Jira Software, which is like an app, like whatever it is. It's, again, that is it, and they've gotten a lot out of it for that. And the stats, how long has it been going on for? About in Jira for almost 4 years.
4 years.
Exactly.
4 years.
Yeah, which is great. So, we can see the first issue that was created. We know almost exactly down to the second one. It was like birth, I guess, for it. And there was about 250 participants in various forms have gone through it. I think there's 200 current, all right?
There was 194 enrolled.
She was exactly.
We have 134 that are currently active.
And all of those, or most of those, spun up unless they turned out early, they spun up all those events, all those linked events. So again, everyone had their kind of calendar in the sky kind of thing. And then there's thousands of issues in the Jira that's not part of this whole, the whole participant tracker. And the kind of point there is, it's not a huge instance. Like, we have clients that have millions and millions of issues, but it's like every issue here is super important. And so, and it's one more thing we're showing where Jira can be used to manage things. Like, it's a lot of, every issue is dense in information and important that things are done. So, I'll just talk about this here. Takeaways, there are actually no regrets, high-level regrets, I guess, of how we did it. If we did it today, we'd almost do it almost the same. We just clean up little things here and there. And it's been going on for 4+ years, and it's only, it's gotten better. And the fact that when you saw that screen where they onboarded a participant, had all custom fields and tabs, I don't know what that was. She did all that. So Jesse was able to take our work and run with it and modify it to, I don't even recognize a lot of it. It's great. And you want to go with that one is yours, I think.
So it fulfilled our goals. We I was able to train other team members for the various pieces of it. I don't directly handle the quality control of the cognitive testing, but I was able to train them on how they can use Jira to track all of that. And same with the clinical assessments that happen. Those happen at a smaller interval, but I train those team members to do that too. We are able to report much faster. We saved so much time with this, and also so much. It was just such a complex process that we put into this, and we were actually doing this complex, trouble with people, like somebody would know this information, but it would just be like word of mouth information. So we are able to show it all in one place, and it changes with us. And I can change the Jira project faster than the CRO who actually keeps our data in the CTMS system. I can change my Jira in 5 seconds, and CTMS system takes weeks to months to change and validate so they can keep up with our protocol amendments.
You know, and what is great is, you know, when they made this choice to use Jira, like, you know, we use Jira all day, so every problem to me is a, you know, like, Jira's my hammer and every problem's a nail. And sometimes we force Jira into a certain thing, but this is a case where we actually made kind of like a whole, like an application, and we were able to really just focus on the problem. And Jira we got so much lift out of Jira, where almost all of our effort was just towards solving the problem, not creating any scaffolding or infrastructure to do it. And Jira just went perfectly with it, and it was, you know, we just love the solution, and we love that it works for them now, so it's great. And that's it, I think. Any, questions? We have 3 minutes for questions again, right?
Does anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. Yes, I knew it.
Good afternoon. The question I had is, when you were training your staff and everybody to be able to, you know, input the data into Jira when a customer or when a client would come in for a dosage or anything like that, what was the biggest hurdle you had in making sure that they put everything into Jira correctly when a patient came in for, you know, say dose 1, 3, 50, or anything in the tickets themselves?
I think that it was just with any kind of data entry is just ensuring that, you know, what you're actually putting in, what you're looking at. So there was very minimal things that we needed to put in Jira in order to track. So we had the CTMS system that our contract resource organization keeps. That's the validated system that has the actual data for analysis. But when we get these source documents in, you know, the information is all there. So in order to get them to put all the information in correctly, I put conditions and validators in place. So that sort of, it really did keep anybody in line. Now, nobody else knew or understood Jira, so there was a little bit of pushback on. And people really don't want to give up their Excel spreadsheets. I don't know if you guys have run into that, but people really love their Excel spreadsheets. So I spent a lot of time sitting in meetings and listening to people say, "Oh well, I'll just start tracking that," and, you know, or I have an Excel spreadsheet for that, and I just, you know, so. But really, the conditions and validators kept that information as true as it could be.
Yeah, and also one thing that is hard to make clear here is like this is not the system of record. Actually, it's for them. They have many systems out there that they have to stitch together that are what Jessie said was the validated ones, and so her team data inputs into Jira. So there's not a lot of people who put the data in here, and they use this to check the validated sources. And because there's no master system, they use this to stitch them all together so they have a complete view of all of them. Is that accurate?
That's
cool.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so that actually sort of speaks to one of my questions. I have two questions. First off, could you give us like maybe an update of any preliminary results of the trial?
No, but I can. I wish I could. I really wish I could. But both of the drugs will end in the end of 2019, and so you would look to the first part of 2020 to see what the readout was for this information.
Cool. And then my second question was, was there a lot of, so were you having to reconcile a lot of different information with your CRO?
Yes, actually.
And how
in
was that
fact,
managed?
and in fact, we found one instance where there was, I had the accurate number of early term participants, and they had this one participant that was tracked as early term in their system, and we went back and forth. And there was no way that initially they believed me that whatever tracking system that I built was truer than theirs, and then ultimately, I won.
That's my favorite question we've had so far. Thank you. And I'll pay you later for that. Thank you. Great. Any other questions?
So we try to keep PHI out of our system and do some scanning for it too. Are you doing any, but I don't think we have it, it's not perfect. Are you doing any scanning, or just there isn't really any place to put PHI? There's no people, you know,
So
looking for names in any of the description fields or notes?
Correct, yeah. So we don't have any fields that would capture any kind of information like that. As a sponsor ourselves, we see It does happen on occasion, but we don't get any PHI information. Everything's tracked on that participant's number. However, we do have a policy of not attaching anything to these events. There really is nothing to attach to them. We do keep paper source documents. There's binders and binders, and I think one day it would be ideal that we could have, this completely HIPAA, PHI, and all of these various different acronyms we have now, GDPR and HIPAA and so on and so forth, but we really do keep it very, very lean.
Yeah, and they treat the system like it does have PHI. I mean, like they're very conscious
We do
about.
treat it like it
Yeah,
has.
yeah, like we had to move it in behind their firewall. I mean, so they do. If PHI crept in there, they'd still be fine probably. Now, when we started, my great idea was to have it. They have all these emails like coming from all these sources, and I first wanted to have it so all the emails would be processed in Jira, and then they would go through. But that, first of all, it's a fire hose of emails, and that some of those did have PHI in it. So that's why we cut that out to be safe. And actually, having it so it's not in Jira worked out better because not much junk cluttering it up all the time. So again, great question. We got one more, and I think.
Oh, is there one more? I didn't see it.
Anybody back there?
Oh, sorry.
So because you're tracking the data in a separate system, you don't have to be 21 CFR Part 11 compliant with Jira? Is that correct?
Correct. We don't pull any data from our Jira system for analysis, so this doesn't have to be validated. It's just a tracking tool, but I hate to call it that. It makes it sound so much smaller than what it really is to me and to my team members. It's our brain when it comes to making sure that we make sure that these visits happen on time. There have been instances where I think that filter language that I showed you, when I take a look at that and I look at my safety MRI dashboard and I see a safety MRI that's coming up due, and I give the site a call and say, hey, I haven't seen this, uploaded just yet, and they'll say, oh, I haven't even scheduled that yet. I need to get them into it. So, and that I bet you that has happened way more than I have counted. It's probably about anywhere from 50 to 65 times that I have caught sites that need to make sure that they have scheduled a safety MRI scan.
Well, thank you, Jesse and Mike. That is a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
Hope you guys enjoyed Summit.
Thank you.